I'm Ken Jacobson, one of the programmers for DocLands, and I want to welcome you to DocLands and to this Q&A for He Dreams of Giants, directed by Keith Fulton and Lou Pepe. First, I want to thank our supporters of the festival, our sponsors, our California Film Institute members, and of course, you, our audience. Now on to the film. He Dreams of Giants had its world premiere at the 2019 Doc NYC Film Festival, screened at AFI Fest, and numerous other festivals. We're very pleased today to have with us directors Keith Fulton and Lou Pepe.
Hello.
Brief bio. Keith Fulton and Lou Pepe are directors of both documentary and fiction films and have made movies together for 25 years. They directed and produced the 1996 documentary, The Hamster Factor and Other Tales of 12 Monkeys. They also directed, as many of you may know, the 2002 documentary Lost in La Mancha, which chronicled Terry Gilliam's earlier attempts to adapt Don Quixote for the big screen. The film was nominated for the European Film Award for Best Documentary, shortlisted for the Best Documentary Academy Award, and won the Evening Standard's Peter Sellers Award for Best Comedy. Their fiction film debut, Brothers of the Head, was winner of the Michael Powell Award for Best British Feature in 2006. Their 2016 documentary, The Bad Kids, received the Special Jury Prize for Verite Filmmaking at the Sundance Film Festival and was selected for the American Film Showcase. It was nominated for both a Peabody Award and an Emmy. Welcome, Keith and Lou. Great to have you here. Congratulations on the film.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So jumping in, let's go back to the beginning. How did you first meet Terry Gilliam, and then how did you begin this seemingly ongoing series of films chronicling his battles with his inner and outer demons?
Keith, do you want me to take that, or do you want to take it?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
In 1994, Keith and I were film students in the graduate film program at Temple University. And Terry came to Philadelphia to film 12 Monkeys and was looking for film students to sort of just shoot some diaristic behind the scenes footage for him. And we applied for the position and sent in our reel and met with his assistant and got to meet him and got the gig, which was a sort of, it was a film school gig in the sense it was like, if you want to do this, it's great. There's no money involved. But we were excited as young filmmakers to watch one of our hero filmmakers at work making a movie. It was a big Hollywood movie. And as budding documentarians, we also felt like, oh, we're not just going to shoot home movie footage for Terry or behind the scenes stuff. We're going to make a feature documentary. We're just not going to tell anybody. So we shot and shot and shot, and we showed up every day and filmed all the little corners of the production that interested us as young filmmakers. And a lot of times people would say to us like, oh, no one wants to see this. No one wants to see this. But Terry had given us permission to shoot whatever we wanted. So we ended up making a feature documentary that was all about the sort of warts and all process of making a Hollywood movie. And
that film ended up getting a release. How did you get it? Or it certainly played the festival circuit.
Yeah, it played the festival circuit, and it was difficult to release the film due to all kinds of legal issues. I think we did a small limited theatrical release in Britain, and I think it ended up, was it broadcast on Channel 4 or something, Lou? I can't remember even. But there was a very silly legal situation having to do with the production design of 12 Monkeys that prevented us from actually selling the film beyond the studio that made the film. So,
but it is on the DVD for 12 Monkeys. So yeah. It did become one of the sort of special features at a time when a feature-length documentary about a film was sort of a rarity. So,
and what was it like being on set and being around Terry and back then, and how did he respond to what you guys were doing?
I think initially we were worried, given the Hollywood film studio system, that we would be. Well, to tell you the truth, when we started making The Hamster Factor, there was somebody on set who would grab our tapes from us when they came out of the camera and number them with a special marker and take them away from us, which was something that was very daunting. And we thought, these are paranoid people. This is going to be really difficult to crack. But Terry was such a good documentary subject in that as long as you stuck with him, you could go anywhere you wanted to go. And he really wanted you to go wherever he was going. So for us, it was fascinating because we got to see all kinds of aspects of the process that normally you would be, publicity people would push you away from them. For example, late in the process, the test screening process in Washington, D.C. for the film, Lou and I penetrated that deeply, and nobody wanted us to be there. Nobody wanted us to see how it was done or what was going on. One of our favorite scenes from that film actually documents the first test screening in Washington, D.C., which did not go well. So, I mean, it was actually really cool because this is the way we got to know Terry as an iconoclast. He just did not care what people saw, much to the upset of the people around him who were much more protective.
Was that his idea to have that film made, or was it the marketing department's idea? And I'm curious just because, he obviously, even by then, he had well-documented issues with studios and having his independence compromised. So
very studio that was making 12 Monkeys, in fact. And so 12 Monkeys was a Universal film, and Universal was the studio that Terry had the big battle over Brazil and the release of Brazil with. Lou, you were going to say something?
Well, he joked. He said, you guys are my witnesses. And I think even at the time, when the Universal executive said, wait, who's going to be on the set filming for Terry? We were very much considered Terry's guys. And I think viewed with a little lack of trust because of that. And there was a whole separate other studio marketing EPK team. We were just these kind of scrappy film students who got to go, as long as we stuck next to Terry, we could go wherever we wanted. So,
can I quickly get you an amusing visual aid that can cut the gap?
Yes, Keith, grab it.
No one's ever seen it before.
I can't wait.
It really has never been publicly viewed. It's a proud thing that we own, which Terry drew for us when Universal was actually going to put a stop to the making of this documentary.
It's a marionette, and the wooden supports on the marionette say Universal, and the strings have gotten caught around the puppet's neck and are strangling him. So we were the puppet, and that was a consolation prize that he had given us when Universal sort of pulled the plug on our project in the early stages before we persisted and managed to get to make the film.
So moving ahead, you made another film about Terry Gilliam trying to make another film. Lost in La Mancha was your film. And this is kind of the beginning of at least the public's awareness of, Gilliam's many-year quest to make, Cervantes's book into a movie. How did that film come about, and what led you to say, okay, we didn't cover it all in Lost. We have to go back now that Terry's going back and make a new film?
Well, we had a little bit of that dilemma when, after The Hamster Factor, Terry would call us periodically about things that he was getting ready to do, and did we want to come along and film? We almost went and filmed for Fear and Loathing, but we couldn't get any money to go along. So then the next time that he called us, it was like he was going to do this Don Quixote project. And part of us was torn. We felt like, well, we've already made a documentary about this guy. And a friend of ours who knew Terry said, well, look, if you go, something will happen. So you should just go. And we thought, well, the one thing that we can do differently is, since the Hamster Factor focused so much on post-production and the test screening process and the marketing and all that, let's go for pre-production, because no one has really taken a look at the process of how a film comes together and what all the anxiety is like as you're leading up to production. Most audiences just see production and think that that's filmmaking.
This was, of course, a very lucky decision to have made, because, you know, anyone who knows Lost in La Mancha knows that the production of Terry's Quixote film only lasted 6 days. So our choice to be in Madrid and to cover the process of the film for the, what was it, 12, 16 weeks prior, 8 weeks prior, was a very good choice. Otherwise, our film would have been extremely short.
And, you know, that film captured a very different angle on Terry at the time. You know, The Hamster Factor ended up being a film that was a kind of man against the system film. And Lost in La Mancha is very much like man against the gods or man against nature. And, you know, what was it, 17 years later, when Terry called us up and said, do you want to come and film? I'm finally going to make this thing. You know, we had serious doubts, like, well, what's going to be different? And beyond us as, you know, being different as filmmakers, having had, you know, 15 years of our careers evolving. But the thing that struck us was, we kept thinking, oh, this is the film where it's going to be man against himself. This is, you know, there was this question that we had going into this project, which is, what does it feel like to finish something that has defined a third of your life when you're a 75-year-old man? And that fascinated me. I kind of really wanted to be there for that existential angst.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously, once again, Terry is facing many challenges in making, you know, Don Quixote into a movie. And, you know, one of the things that I realized is different this time is he has footage in front of him that he's watching of his earlier attempt to make the movie with a different cast. And, you know, he's sitting there watching that footage and saying, wow, what a film that would have been. You know, so this time he's not only sort of measuring his potential movie against the Cervantes novel, but he's measuring his film against his own film. Right. You know, and it just, to me, that's yet a sort of a further layer of this trap that he's just caught in and trying to get out of.
The trap is also that he invited the same documentarians to come and make a new film, because they set that computer down in front of him for the scene in the movie you're talking about and said, hey, Terry, look at this old footage from your old film. And, you know, just because we know how to torture him maximally.
I wanted to ask about that, meaning your ability to torture Terry. You know, there's the scene, you know, there's the scene where there's a bit of a celebration going on in the bar after, you know, shooting has happened, and you're calling Terry. You're the one who's calling Terry and saying, hey, you know, come on down. This is a nice thing happening here. And then soon after he's in the hospital. I'm just wondering, you know, it struck me by including that scene and others as well, that you guys do have this is now a long-term special relationship, I think, with Terry. Can you talk just a bit about how your relationship has evolved?
As we said, when we met Terry on The Hamster Factor, you know, he was a hero to us, and we learned firsthand about his iconoclasm and how determined he was to get what he called at that time an art film through the studio system. So for us, that attitude was incredibly admirable. And I think since that time, you know, we'd always looked up to him, and since we made The Hamster Factor, we would see him anytime we went to London. And I think I would say we became friends. I'm not sure if he would say the same thing at this point.
An important component of the relationship is when we met Terry, we were 30 years old.
Yeah.
And he was in his early 50s or mid 50s. When we set out to make He Dreams of Giants, we were now the age that he was when we first met him. But I have a feeling that, well, this is obviously the perspective of a younger person, but I think we had probably changed a lot more between the ages of 30 and 50 than he had changed between the ages of 50 and 70. And as 50-year-olds looking at him, we had a different perspective that we didn't have when we were kind of excited film students. Oh my God, it's a director. We get to be around a guy who's a hero of ours. And we didn't have the same level of reverence, perhaps. I mean, we have a tremendous fondness and love and concern for him. And I know when he asked us to come along for what became He Dreams of Giants, we were a few people from the previous incarnation. We were some of the old timers who had been there in 2000.
That relationship was really different because we felt like we were part of the fold, and he was really happy to have us there. But, you talk, Ken, about the slightly combative tone that we have with him in this latest documentary. And I think that's part of what Lou was just describing in terms of the way we've matured over the years. And I think that, there was a point of inquiry in He Dreams of Giants, which was, why are you doing this, Terry? Why, after all this time, are you coming back to this thing? You don't need to come back to it. And I think that point of inquiry becomes combative over the course of the documentary, because I think we were feeling a little bit angry, disappointed. Like, you mentioned the scene where, there's a party and all the crew is celebrating the finishing of the film and Terry's not there. And we're thinking like, where the hell's Terry? This is the big moment. Why isn't he here to enjoy, what he's finally achieved? But throughout the film, throughout his production of the film, he was not enjoying himself at all. And I think the film makes that pretty clear. It was an incredibly painful thing to revisit, emotionally and physically. So I think for that relationship, it's interesting. Over time, we were very, very much admirers of his. We would have been afraid to ever say to him, 25 years ago, "Hey Terry, what the hell's wrong with you?" But this time around, it was a very different dynamic.
As a viewer, I really appreciated that relationship, and the fact you put it on, in the film. Mm-hmm. That really worked very well.
I also think, when we were making The Hamster Factor and Lost in La Mancha, as young filmmakers, we were so interested in the process of how movies get made. So being on set, watching the actors, the costumes, all of that stuff really, really excited us. And, being middle-aged and going to a movie set was like, okay, great. It's a crane shot, or it's a celebrity. Big deal. We've seen that. We were so focused on like, what's going on in this man's head? What is he thinking? What is he feeling? Why? So our focus went to a very different place, which is also coming from having a career now as filmmakers ourselves and thinking about like, why does an artist put himself through this?
One thing I really appreciate about the film is it does de-romanticize the process of making films, being a filmmaker, being an artist, and I think in a very important way, in that it doesn't say these things aren't important. It just says this is what it looks like. This is what it means. So speaking to that, there are these themes of aging, and it's not pretty, and obsession and obsessiveness. Which is also not particularly pretty, and I think certainly the obsessiveness of an artist is something that has been very romanticized over the years. But let's take the first thing, aging. How, obviously you guys, you yourselves have gone through an aging process. So how much did you think about this as you were making the film? Just this. Well, the role of aging in our lives and in your lives as filmmakers and in his life as a filmmaker.
Can I start that one, Lou? I mean, as I was saying before about it being painful for Terry to revisit Quixote after it had failed in 2002, it was painful for us to revisit material that we felt like we had, so we'd been there before and we didn't want to go back. And, in the wake of, no, was it prior to or in the wake of Lost in La Mancha? Before Lost in La Mancha, Lou and I had done a bunch of EPK work, so we did a lot of behind the scenes stuff. We became known for, these are the guys you want to get if you want to get stuff that's really, warts and all under the skin. And we got really burnt out on that, really tired of it, because those things became publicity jobs, basically, where we couldn't do what we really wanted to do. And so there was kind of a heavy taint for us actually coming back to this. It was difficult. So I bring that up because, you feel like you're looking in a mirror, you're looking at yourself, from 25 years ago, and you're starting to feel like, I don't have the capacity for this anymore, I can't do this right. Terry was going through very much the same thing. There were points at which there were several cuts of He Dreams of Giants that were much more self-reflexive, that had much more biographical stuff about us, which we really, when we look back on it, we couldn't stand that approach because it was something actually already apparent about it. I think it's still in the film. There's just even the tiniest little bit of a Skype call with Terry where we're talking about, we're all older now and we're all, burnt out more or whatever. It's a component of the film for sure. And for him, I think it's not just about aging in this case for him. It's about the fact that he has had this same project in his face and in his head forever and ever and ever. And there have been 8 attempts, I think, 8 official attempts before the final one. So how much more painful can that be? And I think another filmmaker might have tried to make a romance out of this story, but I think for us, what was most interesting about it is that Terry had enough of a passion to carry it through to the end. And I say that also in light of the fact that it doesn't matter to me what the end product would ever have been, and some people think his film, obviously didn't get a lot of great reviews, didn't get a lot of attention, but why does it matter? This guy tried and tried and tried, and he finally got it done. And there's something incredibly heroic about that, I think.
The other thing, Ken, that we very much experience is more in the editing process on both of the films. I read Don Quixote in 2000 when we were editing Lost in La Mancha, and then I read it again in 2017, right after we had come back from Terry's shoot. And, in my early 30s reading it, it was a book about a dreamer who's got this vision and is going up against, the harsh forces of reality, and it's valiant. And I read it in my 50s and I said to myself, no, this is a book about an old man who's aware that he's going to die and is wondering, did I do anything of value with my life? And so I used to think about this a lot just because I thought like, oh, wow, the narrative is different from my age vantage point. And also what I'm thinking about as I look at Terry, so.
Now that you've made it through this latest iteration and you're, I doubt there's another film coming on your part, another documentary about
Terry Gilliam? No.
about this topic. What are the takeaways for you guys of having, followed this over the decades, followed Terry's creative process, and now that you're where you're at in your own careers, tell us a bit about, just the creative process and filmmaking that maybe is something you might not have come to had you not made this series of films with Terry.
I think it's based on what we were talking about before, but I think there's an element where a lot of times you might think as an artist, get out while the going is good. There's so many filmmakers who've made these bold declarations. I've made my last film, and then they come back 5 years later and they're making another film. We hear this story all the time, but there's that tendency to want to say, I'm done, because if I don't finish now, I'm going to become obsolete. No one's going to care about me anymore. My films are going to, decrease in quality. But there's something about that that's really sad to me. I think in some ways I've learned that, why would you ever give it up? Does it matter if your power is decreased? Does it matter I don't necessarily think so if you enjoy doing it. Right? And I think that's part of the point that we were trying to make in He Dreams of Giants, that the work is most important when you're deep in the throes of making it. You know? And of course, it's important also that you make great pieces of art or somewhat less great pieces of art, whatever it is. But I think it's too bad there's such a pressure for people to succeed at the same level throughout their careers, and to ever have that thought that they should give it up for these reasons that I just mentioned.
Any last thoughts from either of you as we go out about just things that you might want people to think about as they think about Terry Gilliam's work or your documentaries about his work?
You know, I think also on this topic, you know, we start the film with a statement from Terry about how art is really difficult. And I think that the culture has romanticized it. So we think about the glamour of the end product, but really, I think one of the things that, you know, and I feel I see this in Terry is he loves the difficulty of it. The battle against the difficulty in the creative process is what makes him feel alive. And in the case of this film, I think it kept him alive. And I don't know, I remember all throughout, I kept asking myself, like, why do people tell stories? Like, why are human beings drawn to keep doing these things to themselves? And then when you do it, I think you find like, oh yeah, that uphill battle that's what it means to be alive. If it's not uphill, it's horizontal. And when we're horizontal, we're probably not very much alive anymore, so.
Well, I want to thank you guys for your work because, you know, at film festivals, we consume so many films and in our daily lives consume so many stories. You guys have given us the opportunity to look at why that is. Why are we fascinated by story? And what is the process of making art? And to really give us a chance to think about those things. And also just to revel in the artistic process by osmosis. You know, Terry talks about you're in the zone, it's you and the idea, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's clear, you know, that you guys have had your time in the zone as well. So, and I hope that's true.
It is true.
And thank you for having our film, because it, you know, especially this year, it means a lot to have audiences get to see it, since I know film festivals are a different thing these days. So thanks for being part of getting it out there.
Thank you very much. And I think this is the third time we've played the Mill Valley Film Festival, so we're very happy about that. It's very sad we can't actually be there for the good food and wine.
It's sad for us too, and I would just urge our audience, please tell everyone you know about the film, He Dreams of Giants. We're so pleased to be able to bring it to you this year. And Lou and Keith, congratulations, and we look forward to seeing you in person at a future Mill Valley Film Festival.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you very much.
Guys.